Well, my watch says 7:30, so I am calling the meeting to order. That's item 1 on the agenda. A roll call, I'm sure it's been taken and recorded.
Yes.
Election of commission secretary. Are there any nominations for secretary of the Marshfield Police and Fire Commission? Or Fire and Police Commission, whichever way you want. Well, nominate somebody.
I'm not really worried.
Oh, give me a break. Is there a second to that?
I'll second that.
Welcome to the commission.
Any other nominations?
Just like the council. Just like the council.
No other nominations?
I'd say we cast an unanimous ballot for Cory for president, or secretary.
President.
Moving you out there.
For king.
Yeah,
Yeah.
presidents next year.
Wow.
All right, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Right.
Aye. I'm waiting for your vote, Cory.
Oh, I'm not voting for myself. Greg, you just don't leave, that's all I can say.
All right, that piece is taken care of, that's good. Gordy, it'll give you an opportunity to get to know the commission and how the commission works.
Oh, of course, yes,
You're the
yes.
new guy.
Mhm, new guy on the block, yeah.
You'll love it.
I would like to say I'm pleased to have Gordy in the group.
You're welcome, Cory.
Thank you.
Approval of the minutes of the 5/9/19 regular meeting, a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Any corrections or changes to the minutes? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, motion carries. The next item on the agenda is changing the commission meeting schedule. Whose silly idea is this?
I'll take that. I've thought about this for a little while, and usually when we have a commission meeting, it's the first Thursday after the first Tuesday, which falls in line with the same week that we have finance, budget, personnel normally. The only challenge that presents at times is it delays the process if we have a budget resolution that needs approval from this body before it can go to finance, budget, personnel. Because in the following week is a city council meeting, and then the following week after that would be another finance meeting, which it would most likely be approved at, and then the week after that would be the council meeting. So oftentimes after this body approves a budget resolution, it could take upwards of another 3 weeks to get it approved by city council. So my initial thought was if we would push these meetings back 1 week, or forward, I guess, whichever way you want to look at it. So it would be either the second Thursday after the second Tuesday, which in this case, rather than the meeting being this week, it would have been next week. That way it would fall pretty much in line. We would have a police and fire meeting, then the very next Tuesday, it could get if we had a budget resolution, it could be approved by finance, and then the very next Tuesday after that, it would be city council approval. And then I had one of the police and fire commissioners mention to me, Randy had mentioned that Wednesdays work better for him because he's often out of town on Thursdays, or if he stays in town on Thursdays, it is primarily just for this meeting. So then the thought was, would we entertain, or would this body entertain possibly that Wednesday morning meeting, the second Wednesday of the month? It would still fall in line with those weeks.
What you said was the second Thursday after the second Tuesday.
Correct. Because the second Tuesday of the month is always the city council meeting.
The second Thursday after the second Tuesday
Right.
is 2 weeks from the second Tuesday. It's the second Thursday.
The Thursday after the second Tuesday.
I see. Okay.
I forgot what your background is in. Thank you for pointing that out to me, Professor.
I'm always glad to point out your faulty thinking. Well, commissioners, what do you think of the proposal?
I guess it makes sense if we can accommodate the procedures, the process. When I'm available pretty much anytime anybody has to schedule a meeting. Not a problem.
And the same with me, it's just, I would probably need a month, right, to implement it just based on calendar and schedules.
Gordon?
It's fine with me. I was on finance and budget, and yeah, it wouldn't come to us until,
So it'd often be like a
Yeah.
2 week, or week and a half to 2 week delay, where now it would be 4 or 5 days before it would hit finance, and then 1 week to council. It just expedite things by about a week. And then the thoughts on either a Wednesday or a Thursday. I know that, I think I heard back from both Mike and Jen saying that it would work with, with enough notice type of thing. But I wasn't sure about your scheduling or yours, Corey.
Means I have to get up early anyway, whichever day it might be. I don't have any objection to it. It doesn't seem like there are any obvious negatives. I would need I would think a motion to change schedule because the schedule is in the bylaws. I think so.
Do we wanna, as long as we're changing everything, does the time work for everybody, or, 7:30 in the morning, or 5 at night, or, if we're changing things, we should consider that too, before it pops up in the middle of the year or something.
All right.
I'm just fine the way it is right now, but,
Mornings are better for me.
okay.
All right, then we need a motion to change our meeting time to the first Thursday after the second Tuesday.
Oh, you mean Wednesdays, so.
Or when are we doing, Wednesdays?
Wednesday after the second Tuesday.
Wednesday after, excuse me, Wednesday after the second Tuesday. Yes, sir.
motion.
Thank you. Second to the motion. Thank you. Any discussion? Hearing none, we need a roll call.
Do you?
Well, let's do it, it's just, no? Let's do a roll call, that way we're really efficient.
Earl,
Yes,
Neese,
Yes.
Myers,
Yep.
Keel.
Yes. You'll have to, Peggy, change the schedule, and get it to us so we can get it on the calendar, otherwise we'll have to. Any more?
Yeah, the only other discussion, this might fall into play, is with budget. Normally in July, we adjust that meeting, just to give us more time to put together the budget. A lot of times, the numbers we get from the city are delayed. Sometimes just that it puts us back, maybe a week or two of when we'd like to have it presented to you, so it's often difficult to get that. So I guess just for awareness, there's a chance that the
We've
meeting
always
for July
adjusted
could be
the
adjusted.
budget meeting. And are you saying that finance is sometimes late in getting you the numbers?
I didn't say that exactly. No, this meeting is normally a little early for those numbers, so.
I see. Oh, God. All right, thank you for that. Approval of the fire department bills. Chief,
Good morning.
Morning.
2 sets of bills in front of you. Both were signed by Commissioner Meese. First one on April 30th, second on May 20th. Really, the only thing that stands out that would probably cause shock to some people is on 6M, is our fire extinguisher training simulator that was purchased and came in. We've used it several times already for training businesses, and it's been a very positive addition. We are going to do a demo here for the commission at a future meeting when Deputy Chief Floody can be here. Other than that, I didn't really see anything that stood out as significant or out of the ordinary. I'd be happy to answer any questions and answer your
motion to approve.
So,
second.
Thank you. Questions, comments about the fire department budget? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion to approve, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Oh,
Back in the cycle.
shut up. And you know, what really drives me nuts is Peggy puts RC in red after all the required roll call. And I still do it. Well, you brought it up, you do it.
Earl,
Yes.
Neese. Yes. Myers.
Yes.
Keel.
Yes,
Thank you.
thank you. Approval of police department bills, chief.
Yes, two sets of bills, both signed by Commissioner Meese, one on the 7th, one on the 22nd. The only thing to bring to your attention was some minor repairs that our armored rescue vehicle needed on 7C. It's just for some air conditioning repairs and, from my understanding, some brake repairs. So, I'd be happy to answer any questions, otherwise we'll look for your roll call approval.
Who's having fun now, but that's gonna change. Comments, well, I need a motion to approve.
To approve.
Thank you. Second.
Second.
Thank you. Comments, questions? Hearing none, we'll have a roll call or vote.
Earl,
Yes.
Neese. Yes. Myers.
Yes.
Keel.
Yes. Fire department activities, training reports and correspondence packet. Is there anything in there you wanna particularly note?
Not so much. We'll kind of go through a real quick synopsis. It was a busy month again. This is the end of the school year, so we start to see a lot of school tours coming in. Several EMS student ride-alongs again, finishing up their semester as well. The driver operator class for, I think, 7 of our personnel. Actually, their state practical exam is tomorrow. They had their written exam yesterday. And once they're done, everybody will have that training. May was Stop the Bleed month. Steve, Deputy Chief Bacus, presented public training on Stop the Bleed each Wednesday. If he wasn't here, a shift member did it, but a lot of good feedback from the participants. We had a few city staff that came, but it was very good. On 8B, each shift went and toured Masonite. Masonite is as everyone knows, a very large facility, and response there is always a challenge. So we went, toured the facility again. It's been a long time since most have been there. A pretty complex facility. We had a few of the officers that toured with us as well, and it was a very good tour, very thorough. 8C and D, we met with Tracy again for practice runs of the validation. The last shift went through on Monday. Everybody did really well. So now we're in the process, or Tracy's in the process of finalizing task books and everything else she has to do. And she actually starts her therapy sessions with us on Monday here at the station. Other than that, I'd be happy to answer any questions and ask if there's something.
Questions?
Chief, there was something on May 6th at Fire Deck. Some
Yep.
gear demonstration, what's that about?
That's for, one of the things that we put in the CIP this year for the next 3 years is to purchase a second set of fire gear for everybody because of our cancer prevention program that we're starting. And that was one company that came in and showed us their gear, allowed the guys to wear it around and try it and see what it was like.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? I've got one that I'm pretty sure I understand. But if I go back to my own experience, if I gave a test and everyone in the class got a 90 or better, I would say that test wasn't very discriminating. It didn't identify the difference between the best prepared and the least prepared.
I don't know their scores yet. It's a state test.
No, I'm talking about the physical test.
Oh,
And this isn't a test where you're trying to figure out who gets the F. There has to be some Fs. Well, maybe they don't have to be Fs.
Respectfully, I disagree, because the test is designed to see if we can do the job.
Yeah.
Everybody here can do the job, so we should have 100% pass rate.
You gotta be careful. If you have an assessment and everybody does just fine, there ought to be honest, there ought to be a bell curve. And there should be some people on the left side. Doesn't mean that they can't pass it, but there's gotta be a difference between the best and the,
oh, and there it is. I mean, I was here, I watched every shift go through. There were people that struggled. I failed it the first time because I physically couldn't do it. I was exhausted. It's been since 2008 that I really put on an air pack and was out doing stuff. But there were struggles. I mean, there were people that were getting close to giving up because it's, to those that run the marathons and do that crazy stuff, it was no problem for them. It was too easy for them.
and let's not be judgmental.
Yeah, well, it's crazy stuff.
Yeah.
And for those that maybe run on the treadmill or walk periodically on the treadmill or whatever, it was a struggle.
Yeah.
It was, it was definitely one
Well,
that.
in a sense, that's
It's
good,
challenging.
because it tells them then that they have some room to.
Oh, yeah,
work on.
definitely.
Yeah, okay.
Definitely.
All right.
Yeah, no, not everybody flew through with flying colors. It was not that at all.
All right. Then I am more comfortable.
But I did pass the second time.
Sweating a little?
Oh my God. Sweating a lot.
Yeah. It's realistic for what we do.
We're wearing an extra 70 pounds or whatever
Yeah.
in our fire
So
gear.
am I.
In our fire gear. Luckily, the days we did it, it was comfortable weather.
Uh-huh.
It wasn't 80 or 90 degrees because we would probably run it that day.
Well, I tell you what, for now, I'm doing August.
Yeah.
We haven't set a date yet.
So next year we run in the marathon then, right?
Yeah, no, that ain't gonna happen. There's too many people that run marathons and don't need that.
I'd like to see the cost-effect relationship there.
Yeah.
Police report.
Yeah, a busy month as well. A couple things bring your attention. On May 8th, I was able to meet with the new safety director at Mid-State Technical College. He covers Stevens Point, Rapids, and Marshfield campuses, and it's a newer position, especially in Marshfield here. His goal is to make it up here a couple of times per month, and he just wanted to connect with local law enforcement. He's actually a retired officer from Wisconsin Rapids Police Department. On the 13th, Josh Fallon, who we hired from ODC, started. I believe this is his 4th year with us, doing parking enforcement throughout the summer. Happy to have him back. We were fortunate enough to send most of our SWAT team down to Fort McCoy on the 14th and 15th of May for a statewide training, where they're able to train with other SWAT teams down there. The 16th was our police memorial event, which was probably our highest attended event that we've had yet. We moved it down to Wildwood Park, and a rough count was over 300 in attendance, and it was a really good event. On May 20th, we had a presentation or a training that we often do at the high school, and it's called Safety After High School. And what we do, what our intentions there is to connect with both the men and women, or the seniors of the school who are going to be graduating, and just kind of letting them know of, I mean, there's a certain amount of sheltering that happens in our city, just with the size of the city and the quality of the police and fire forces. So, I mean, there's the ability, I mean, now if some of these kids are going to be leaving to go to larger cities or further away from home, we talk about some basic, and we demonstrate some basic self-defense. We discuss alcohol and how that influences them when they're making decisions. Now we talk about sexual assaults and other possible domestic partner violence that they may be exposed to, that maybe they've been to an extent sheltered from since they've been in school and in the city of Marshfield. We've been doing this, I want to say, for 3 or 4 years now, and it's been well received. We partner with Personal Development Center when we do this, and a number of other organizations in the community. We performed active shooter presentations at City Hall this last month on both the 23rd and the 28th. Ironic that it was within a week of the Virginia Beach shooting that happened at their complex, city complex, in early June. But it just goes to show you that, I mean, no business is really exempt from somebody in crisis making poor decisions and affecting multiple lives. And the last thing I'll bring to your attention is, as far as the date goes, is May 29th, we had our Citizens Academy graduation. Everyone graduated that attended, which is good. We've yet to have one fail, so, which I know that would throw off that bell curve that you're saying, maybe
Well, I
our
know you
Citizens
had
Academy
one
isn't more
close to failing
difficult.
last year.
And like Scott said, we had many tours throughout the month of May, grade school kids that keep our daily shift staff pretty busy. The only other thing I want to bring to your attention is on 9H, we sold 2 of our tasers to Port Edwards Police Department. They were sharing tasers. When we had purchased our Axon body cameras, we bought the officer safety package, which included a taser for each of our officers because we used to share tasers as well. And we didn't have enough to go around, obviously. So when we bought that officer safety package, it supplied each officer with their own taser. So we had all of the other tasers that we still had in storage. So we were able to sell 2 of them to Port Edwards Police Department for $1,300 for the 2 of them. And that was a pretty good deal to them, and it was good for us because otherwise they're just sitting in the cabinet. So be happy to answer any questions, otherwise this will be placed on file.
Thank you. Any questions? Comment? Both of these, I should have had a motion for fire. Thank you, Chief. Busy month. Finance Director Amon is next on our agenda to tell us about a new budget process.
Okay.
Never understood the old one. You go ahead.
Sure. So a lot of the forms, a lot of the procedure we're keeping the same, but kind of the conceptual change we're making is what we used to do in the past is the first pass of the budget was everybody could request everything they wanted, dump everything in, not just police and fire, and then we'd have this initial huge budget deficit that we'd have to go through line by line and kind of get down from there. So what we're doing different this year is the first pass of the budget is going to be a lot more prescriptive, meaning that we'll kind of put in the budget manual kind of what the initial guidelines are. What we're trying to get at in the first pass of the budget is what is kind of the cost of living discretionary increase in the budget, and then go from there. So really what the first pass of the budget is going to be is simply approved staff, approved CIP, a couple utility type cost of living increases, and then everything else not to exceed prior year budget. So what we're hoping is with that first budget, we'll be able to go to council and say, here's the cost of this year's cost of last year's government before we change anything. I think that's what's been missing in the past is, I think to have a sustainable budget, you have to figure out what that cost of living discretionary increases and then go from there. So that's kind of the major change of the first pass. And then from there, departments, along when they submit that initial budget, they'll have a request for changes. Because obviously, it's kind of a one-size-fits-all at the beginning because we're just kind of really prescribing what's in that first budget. And when that budget's submitted, We will also take requests of, I need more of this, less of this, and those kind of things. And then those will go run through the city administrator for approval. So we'll have kind of a cost of living budget and then any adjustments from there. So in a nutshell, that's kind of the major change to the budget process this year and going forward. So I'll just kind of stop there, see if you have any questions. So what we'll have to figure out is the timing on the approval from the Police and Fire Commission, because that first budget isn't going to be the last budget. It's going to be this prescribed budget, probably with police and fire requests to change from that base.
Comments or questions? There have been a number of approaches to building the budget that comes from the Police and Fire Commission to the city. One side has said, we know that there are limits, we know that the city is in this position, and so you push the chiefs to prepare budgets that are responsive to the limits that we know are there. The other side has been, that's not our job. Our job is to ask for what we think we need, and if it pushes the budget, then let the city deal with that. In this process, there'll be a budget that comes that is basically last year's budget with whatever little bit you might think cost of living.
Correct.
And then a separate request that's above that if we think we really need something.
Correct.
You know, experience would tell me that that's going to limit the ability of the city to listen to requests that are significantly greater than they were the year before.
That very well could be.
I guess an initial reaction is I'm uncomfortable with the process if it limits police and fire, public safety, limits the ability of those two agencies to ask for what they really need.
Sure. And I would say that it's really, you can still ask for everything you need, approve everything you need. It's just a two-step process now. Whereas you can put everything in at the beginning, it's now, we have kind of the base and the additional request. So the sum of the two is going to be the same. But what we're really getting at is the first one, we have no idea in the past what our cost of living increases are. So that's, to me, that's the key number from this first step. But between the two, all the requests will be considered.
And cost of living is what you got last year, plus a % or two, depending upon
Right, so-
the environment or the cost of living increase nationally, or
So in the budget manual, so it's approved staff. So that's on the, for the police fire, it's the contractual,
Yeah.
progression. CIP, what's already been approved in the CIP process. And then for the individual line items under there, I think there's 26 additional assumptions in the budget manual. Fuels based on, commodity rate, internal service, health insurance, goes up 10% a year. So those are all laid out in the budget manual. So those are all captured in there. And then the true discretionary items start out, office supplies and those kind of things start at not to exceed prior year. So that's step one. Then the departments have to look at that and say, well, I need more of this, less of that, or I have some larger requests that need to be considered.
okay.
So again, it's just two steps versus one.
I'm a little confused why you don't know what the previous year's baseline budget is. That seems like it's just simple math.
Yes, yeah, I completely agree. We do not have the software tools to apply universal modifiers to all our budgets. Even though we have 190 employees, we have to prepare over 300 budgets and push them together to come up with a budget. And we can't do any universal modifiers to individual line items. So it's a workaround. We should be able to generate it, push that first one out and ask for adjustments.
Has there ever been, as long as we're talking about it, has there ever been any consideration about a zero balance, but I mean a zero budget? Instead of starting with last year's budget and adding 2.5%, to going with exactly what you need and build up to that and see what your budget's gonna be. I mean, it's very cumbersome, but it's zero-based budget, which there are actually some places that do that.
I haven't heard a lot of discussion on that one, but I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, because then you'd really get what you need, instead of saying, well, we've got this, and we have $200 in subscriptions last year, so we'll make it $205 worth of this year. Instead of just saying, well, what magazines do we get? And, it's something simple like that, but, and then, like I said, it would be very cumbersome, but, there are actually communities that do that. You don't start with last year's book and just increase it.
Right.
Any other comments or questions? When, to what degree does it change the budgeting schedule?
The budgeting schedule is the same. I think in prior years, I don't know if we pushed it out yet, but we've got it all scheduled for all the steps, real similar to last year and previous years.
So there'll be a date for the initial budget,
Correct.
and there'll be a date for any additional requests.
And those are the same. So when the initial budget's handed in, with that, we're requesting that those requests are attached, but not approved at that point. So that's why they're kept separate at that point.
Chiefs, are you both familiar with this and functioning in response to it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it'll be a little different. Ron and I had talked, and I said, so, say we budgeted $8,000 for ammunition, both practice and duty carry ammunition. And if ammunition prices go up, ultimately what we would do is we would ask for the same dollar amount of ammunition, but it might be fewer rounds of ammunition. So then on that separate ask sheet, we would have to ask for those additional rounds of ammunition because maybe the cost went from $8,000 for what we need to $10,000 for what we need. So it'd be a matter of knowing some of that. I guess to answer Mike's question about a zero balance budget, the only challenge that presents at times, but I mean, we're exposed to that challenge historically, is when you have to have, because the city doesn't finally approve the budget until November, but we have to have it in to you guys by July. I mean, there's often times where either the vendors or, for like subscriptions, I mean, a lot of that is software subscriptions. A lot of times they don't even know what their rate increase is going to be until December for January and such. So a lot of that is a guessing game. We're not only trying to guess where things are going to increase from November to January when maybe we need to spend it, but now from July to January when, I mean, that's quite, we were exposed to that this past year when we assumed, and working through Ford dealership, what the cost of Ford Explorers would be come January when we needed them. Well, if we wanted them for 2019, if we wanted additional Explorers, we had to actually purchase them or commit to purchasing them in September. Well, our budget was approved by police and fire. It wasn't approved by the city until November. I wasn't comfortable committing to a purchase that hadn't been approved yet. So when we delayed making that purchase until the final budget was approved in November, we missed our window to purchase the Ford Explorers, so then we had to purchase some other vehicles, which ended up costing more than what the Ford Explorers would have cost us. So I mean, it's a game at times, it's an unfortunate game just based on those timelines. I mean, many of the vendors that we work with can't commit to what their 2020 pricing is going to be in June or July of 2019. They just aren't comfortable doing that because there's so many unknowns, even on their end, that it presents a challenge, but it presents a challenge to us, it presents a challenge to the city. You know, and even making some of those requests for estimates. So I think you kind of go off of, okay, well, we're anticipating a 5% increase or a 10% increase or a 3% increase. And we try to factor that into the budget, which I think would cause challenges because the zero balance budget is a lot more fine-tuned and a lot more specific than what we're doing right now. I mean, in our training budget right now, I mean, we'll anticipate what we have to send officers to training at, but I mean, we don't even know if A, those trainings are gonna be available, and B, what other trainings are gonna be made available that actually are more specific to that officer's needs. So we've actually talked about, well, maybe we just need to allocate a certain dollar amount per officer for training and just try to stay within that as opposed to trying to have a line item budget to where we actually define what some of these known trainings will most likely be. I mean, it's unfortunately a guessing game, but fortunately, I mean, I think between police and fire, I mean, we've always come in at the end of the year, either right on point for budget or slightly under for budget. I don't know if either one of us have been extremely, have been over budget to that extent. So I mean, we've done a good job, I think, fiscally managing that money that the city allocates to us, but it is a challenge. It's a challenge, and I don't see that going away even with this new process because of the timeline.
Let me ask, you used ammunition as an example, 100 rounds, $8,000. By the time it's all done, the same 100 rounds is going to cost you $10,000. Does the $2,000 additional have to go in that second budget? That doesn't make any sense to me. They need 100 rounds. Doesn't make any difference if it costs 6,000 or 12,000. They need 100 rounds. Ron, what does the city do about that?
So that'll probably be in a line item, so that's just one item, probably in a larger line item.
Yeah.
So depending on what the assumption is for that line, say it's not to exceed, it's one of the not to exceed ones. So when the budget's submitted, that's on the request saying for this line item, and maybe there's some ups and downs that kind of net each other out, but for this line item for the budget, I actually need X thousand dollars more, and that goes on the request. I think it's called the budget request change.
See, that's the problem. It goes on the extra request. And for the police department, some things, and the fire department, some things are not extra. Prices change.
Correct.
I just signed a $140,000 check for another agency to buy stuff that we won't need for probably 9-10 months because of the possibility of tariffs increasing the cost of stuff from China. Prices change, you need the stuff anyway. If the police department needs 100 rounds, they need 100 rounds. It doesn't make any difference if it costs $2,000 more. Making it something extra rather than something base to the budget troubles.
Correct, and it'll be a learning experience, because I'm sure there'll be line items that will be exactly what you described, and then we will, the following year, see if we can modify the process from there, but I think the concept and what we're trying to get at, and the big question is, what is a sustainable city levy increase? And we can't do that with the current process we have.
No, and it doesn't make any difference in one sense how much money the city collects, how much money the city has. Public safety costs a minimum amount. So those decisions aren't, well, we'll put this off, or we don't need that, or we can do with one less employee. Public safety is in a different category, and I think should be treated differently. But anyway. didn't expect to get talk back, did you?
No, hey, we're changing a lot of things, so welcome feedback, and we can look at everything as an iterative process, you know. We think the concept is good. I think it's not, I said to the staff, one size is not gonna fit all, we're gonna have to modify as we go forward.
You say it's an iterative process. That implies that there's shifting and changing expected in the development of the process. As long as that's for certain, I feel a little better about it. Oftentimes, these things, you set up the rules in advance, and then you hide behind them, and that's how it's, you know, on. And that's not you, it's a generic term. So anyway, we know what the rules are, we know how you want to play the game, and we'll go ahead and we'll yell all we want.
Sounds good?
All right, thanks.
Thanks, Ron.
The next item on our agenda, and I'll read it because I think you're supposed to. Consideration of motion to adjourn into closed session pursuant to section 19.85, parentheses 1, parentheses E, Wisconsin statute deliberating or negotiating the purchase of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specific public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session, specifically to discuss ambulance contract with Marshfield Clinic. I would accept a motion to go into closed session.
Motion.
Thank you, and I have a second. All in favor of the motion? Roll call.
Earl,
Yes.
Neese, Myers,
Yes.
Keel.
Yes. We are in closed session.